Welcome to the Injury Law Pod, the podcast that explores and demystifies the complex world of personal injury law. Each week, Missouri personal injury attorney Eric Bartlett dives into the legal issues surrounding personal injury cases to help you understand your rights and options when seeking justice and compensation for personal injuries. Join Eric as he shares his experience and real-life case studies, interviews guests, and answers your questions about personal injury law. The information Eric shares will help level the playing field if you have a personal injury claim. So sit back, relax, and let's explore the world of personal injury law together.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Injury Law Pod. I am your host, Eric Bartlett, 27-year personal injury lawyer. And this is the podcast where we break down everything personal injury law related. We try to keep it simple, make it informative so that if you're either going through a claim for personal injury, whether that's out of a car accident, a work injury, a fall, a dog bite, whatever it may be, you have the information you need so that the insurance company doesn't win. Our mission here is to defeat insurance companies. That's what we do for a living when we're representing people, is leveling the playing field, if you will, for those people that are injured making claims. Because at the end of the day, the insurance company, which is a multi-billion-dollar company, they know the rules of the game. They've created a lot of rules of the game. And so if you don't know those rules, don't know the process, don't know the procedures, don't know what you should and shouldn't be doing, you will lose. You will not get fairly compensated for the injuries, the damages that you have. So listen up. Again, if you're going through the process, then definitely take notes. If for some reason you've come across my podcast, then I would say take notes, because you will learn something that could potentially help you someday in your life. And today we're talking about uninsured motorist coverage. We recently talked about underinsured motorist coverage, but equally as important is uninsured motorist coverage. And this is automobile insurance coverage that everybody's probably going to have on their policies if they have a vehicle covered by an insurance company, because it's generally required. It's definitely required in Missouri. It's definitely required in Kansas. And again, just as a reminder, if you're on the roadways, driving a vehicle, riding in a vehicle, and for these purposes, when we talk about uninsured coverage, if you're walking around roadways, if you're riding a bicycle around roadways, whatever it may be, there is a really good chance at some point you're going to be involved in some type of an incident with a motor vehicle. So it could be an automobile collision. You could be hit as a pedestrian. You could be hit riding your bicycle. If you're on the roadways, it's dangerous out there. There's a reason that Eric has a job, because there are a lot of accidents every single day. And the statistics show that we're probably going to be involved in at least one and probably two automobile accidents in our lifetimes. That's the statistics. I've gone through those before on previous episodes, and it's just a fact of life. So you want to be prepared. You want to make sure, obviously, you want to be prepared on the front side of anything happening, because this is the time, if you haven't been injured, to make sure you've got what's needed. But if you're already in it, then, here's the thing. We're going to break it down. Let's see what is out there that can help you right now. So, to begin, uninsured motorist coverage. It's just basically what it sounds like. It is coverage on your own auto policy to provide insurance coverage in the event you are hit by an uninsured motorist. Now, this also includes a scenario where somebody hits you and leaves the scene. That's an uninsured motorist if that person is never identified. It's essentially called a phantom vehicle, which is the scenario where that vehicle could never be identified. So if that's the case, you can make a claim on your own coverage, your own uninsured motorist coverage. It also comes into play when the other driver who is identified does not have insurance on their vehicle. And it doesn't take much driving around to see a lot of expired license plates, whether they're temp tags, whether they're regular license plates. If you start paying attention to people's license plates, you're going to notice a lot of expired tags. And so what does that tell you? That tells you those people probably don't have insurance on their car, because what they did is, if they bought the car, they got a temp tag, they had to have insurance, most likely when they bought the car, but then they didn't register their car, they didn't get the appropriate license, and they let the insurance lapse. Or if it's already been licensed at some point and now it's expired, obviously, for whatever reason, they haven't gone in, they haven't done the things, paid the money to get their license renewed. Maybe they haven't paid their property taxes, so they can't get it renewed. And so then you pretty much can assume there's a good chance they don't have insurance coverage. There can also be situations where somebody's driving a vehicle and they didn't have permission to drive the vehicle. So now, even though there may be insurance on that car, they don't have coverage because the insurance company is saying there was no permission given, so we have no obligation to cover it. So there's a lot of scenarios, a lot of people. We see a lot of uninsured motorist accidents. So it's really important that you have all the proper uninsured motorist coverage in place. So you ask, well, you already said it's required if I have insurance. So what's there to worry about? Well, it comes down a lot of times to how much you have on your policy. So let's remember this. In Missouri, $25,000 is all you have to have on your vehicle for it to be legal on the road. You have to have a policy of insurance issued by a company, and the policy limits have to be minimum $25,000. So that means for your liability coverage, which is where you are covered in case you cause an accident, you have to have $25,000. On the uninsured portion, same deal. You have to have $25,000. So that's it. And as I've talked about before, you can understand in today's world with inflation, medical bill inflation, wage inflation, wages are higher. So if you have lost wage claim, all these things, $25,000 can go very quickly. You have an ambulance ride to an emergency room. They do scans on you. Boom. You may be at $10,000 in medical bills right there. And that's not even starting to factor in if you have to miss a few weeks from work. Then if you go down the process and you end up in physical therapy, maybe you have some kind of pain management where they're doing injections. And God forbid, what if you've had a broken bone in an accident? What if you've had to have surgery? What if you've had to miss months of work? What if you're going to have future issues coming out of this? Future medical, future missed time from work, all of this. And then that doesn't even get into, that's the economic damages. Then the real impact, the disruption to your life, the living with this daily, what we sometimes call the harms and the losses that go with suffering a serious injury. It's thrown out all the time as quote unquote pain and suffering. That's an element of damage that you can claim. And so we haven't even gotten there. We were just talking about the economic losses and how quickly $25,000 is nothing. So what can you do to make sure, if you're in the situation where you are hit by an uninsured motorist, that you're not worried about how much you have? Well, you got to shop your insurance. And here's what I've said before. You have to go and you have to go through, say you've got an app for your insurance, you've got an agent, whatever that looks like. You got to make the connection and you have to start playing with the numbers. And you have to say, okay, you can do it one of two ways. You can go baby step. You can go, what's it look like to go from 25,000 to 50,000? And once you see that, and you're like, oh, wow, it's only $5 more a month to double my coverage. Okay, now go from 50,000 to 100,000 of coverage. And when you see that, oh, it's only $6 more a month to go from 50,000 to 100,000. So now maybe from going from 25,000 to 100,000, it's around $10 more a month to have so much more coverage, right? Well, the next step generally is going from $100,000 to $250,000 of coverage. And you may look and you may see, oh, wow, it's only another $10 a month. So a lot of times, and I just did this in my office recently with somebody that works here, she had $50,000 of coverage. And we got up to $250,000 of coverage. And it basically ended up being around $12 more a month for her to go to 5 times the amount she had originally. It's crazy. If you have a good driving record, a good claims history, you will be amazed at how cheap it is to get really solid coverage. And here's the cool thing with uninsured motorist coverage. There's a couple cool things. One of those is that with uninsured motorist coverage, the law allows you to stack your coverages. So what do I mean by that? When you have an uninsured motorist claim, if you have 2 vehicles, 3 vehicles, 4 vehicles, whatever it looks like, insured on that policy, you can add up those different vehicles for your total coverage on uninsured motorist claims. So for example, let's say you ended up getting $250,000 of coverage on 3 vehicles that you have. Well, If you have an uninsured motorist claim, you have now up to $750,000 of uninsured motorist coverage for that claim. You have 3 vehicles, $250,000 a piece. That's $750,000. Mind blowing. So this is really, really important. This is the stuff that can make or break you if you're ever faced with this situation. And how is it that I can say that? Well, I can say that because unfortunately, on a very regular basis, I am faced with the client that is sitting there with not enough uninsured motorist coverage. They have a serious injury. Maybe there's a death, right? The worst case scenario. The father of 3 has been killed, and he was the breadwinner, and he was hit by an uninsured motorist. And on their own policy, they only had $50,000 of uninsured coverage with 2 vehicles. So there's $100,000 available. And we're talking about, maybe a $2 million claim. And there's only 100,000. And there's nobody to sue. Oh, sure. You say, well, what about the driver, that caused this? Can we sue them? That's a question I get all the time. And the answer is sure, you can sue them, but it's a piece of paper. You're going to get a judgment in court for $1 million, $2 million, whatever. And the person who was driving with no insurance amazingly doesn't have anything to their name. That's why they didn't have insurance. Responsible people that have a lot of assets, or back it up, responsible people, period, whether they have a lot of assets or not, they have insurance. But the person that was driving around with no insurance has nothing to their name. So you go get a judgment against them, big money. You're never going to see that. There's nothing to collect. What's the saying? You cannot squeeze blood from a turnip. Right. So they're going to, either you're going to chase it down and go nowhere because, again, there's no assets. They either don't work, they have very minimal wages, whatever it is, or they're going to file bankruptcy and they're going to take out that judgment in bankruptcy because you're a creditor at that point and you never see a dime. So you have to take the steps to protect yourself against the person that has not acted responsibly. You have to make sure you have the coverage in place on the front side so that you're protected. And again, if you're already there, you've already got an uninsured motorist claim. Now you need to start looking at what is available to you. How many cars did you have insured? What were the policy limits? And that'll help you figure out whether or not you're going to have a reasonable chance at getting compensated. But again, I beg you, if you're listening to this on the front side of anything bad happening right now, as soon as this podcast is over, you're doing the math, you're doing the price checking on your coverages because it just happens too often. And it's a really sad situation. And again, I could go through story after story after story of heartbreak when the moment arises. So what's another really cool part of uninsured motorist coverage? Well, as I mentioned earlier, uninsured motorist coverage follows you around. And so if you're walking as a pedestrian and you get hit by an uninsured motorist, your uninsured motorist coverage you have on your auto policy covers you in that claim. So here you are, you're walking, you're not driving your vehicle, but you're covered on your own policy. Pretty cool, right? So another reason why you want to have a robust uninsured motorist policy. It also covers you if you are riding a bicycle on the roadways and get hit by an uninsured motorist. Or for that matter, if you're a pedestrian in a parking lot, a bicyclist in a parking lot, it doesn't really matter where you are. If you are hit by another motor vehicle and that motor vehicle is uninsured, your uninsured motorist comes into play. So there's a really broad umbrella of coverage available to you through your own policy. And that's why it's so important to make sure you have it really solid, a lot of coverage there. Because again, in the world, when we're out and about, there are so many opportunities to encounter a uninsured motorist. The other thing that you need to know about uninsured motorist coverage is it follows you around also when you're a passenger in somebody's vehicle. So let's say you're riding in their vehicle. Let's say they're not at fault for an accident that happens. Again, it's an uninsured motorist, another driver causes the collision. You now may have a couple different layers of coverage for this accident. First, more than likely, the vehicle you were riding in will be primary coverage for an uninsured motorist claim. So you'll be looking to your friend's coverage to see what comes into play to protect you. But then your coverage can be on top of that. So now you've got additional coverage. Again, you're riding in somebody's car. Here it is. Another thing I see, a lot of times uninsured motorist coverage comes into play. Let's say you're working and let's say you're on the clock. Let's say you're driving a company vehicle. So there's an accident. It's caused by an uninsured motorist, and there will be a policy of insurance, most likely on the vehicle, the company vehicle you're in. But normally, the way companies insure their vehicles, they provide a very low coverage amount for employees riding and driving in those company vehicles. See, they may have $1 million of liability coverage on that vehicle so that if you're driving and you cause an accident, this company isn't going to have to pay out on a serious claim. They're going to have insurance coverage. But what they do is they provide to their employees a very small. They may do the state minimum $25,000. They may do $50,000. I see that a lot. So in that instance, now you are driving in a company vehicle. You only have a small amount of uninsured motorist coverage. Well, guess what? Your personal coverage can come into play. So you might have a work comp claim that might be helping take care of medical bills and, if time that you're missing from work and that kind of stuff. But you also have a claim coming out of the auto accident. And that claim is covered by auto insurance. And that claim, you're looking at whatever's on the company vehicle and then whatever's on your personal vehicle. And again, depending on the severity of it, when these things happen, you're looking for any money you can find because you need it. All of a sudden, your life is totally disrupted. You're not working. You may never be able to work again. Again, maybe sadly, you're the one that dies and now you've got a family left behind. You got to make sure you've set all the things in place so that people are taken care of. You're taken care of, whatever the scenario may be. So this is the importance of uninsured motorist coverage. Again, you're going to have it if you have a policy of insurance on a car. The real question is, how much? How much are you going to have? And that is something you cannot wait. You have to make sure you have a lot. So again, I encourage you, as soon as this is over, find out, start shopping, and I guarantee you're going to be amazed at how much coverage you can get for not much money. So as always, I hope you found this informative, educational. If you did, I always ask, please leave a 5-star review wherever you are listening. And if we can help, feel free to reach out. And until the next episode, stay safe, stay well.